Put them on silent mode so that we don't have any disturbances during the seminar. So good morning and welcome to this seminar on innovative financing. May I now invite our distinguished speakers and moderator to join us on the stage. Mr. Pardeshi, allow me to invite Mr. Hun Kim, the Acting Vice President for Investment Solutions at AIIB, for his opening remarks, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, and good morning, distinguished guests, and a warm welcome to all of you. Some of you may know that this is AIIB's 9th annual general meeting. Especially this year, it is in the magnificent city of Samarkand. And I hope you had a chance or will have a chance to explore and experience the heritage of this great city during your stay. A little bit about AIIB in terms of now AIIB is the fully a member of multilateral development bank family, I would say. Now in these early years, next year will be our 10th anniversary. And both its owners and our stakeholders were kind and tend to be more patient and supportive, and allowing a young bank, young institution, time to grow and find its path. Now, however, as the bank matures, we will face a more increasing pressure on us to demonstrate our effectiveness and value in the international development landscape and doing more things on our own. So after a decade of successful branding and delivering a solid result, and particularly during the period of a global economic and health crisis, I believe AIIB has built a reputation. Now the challenge is perhaps our reputation has outpaced our operational capacity. So ironically, the bank's success may now, in my view, pose its greatest challenge. We have to deliver quality and quantity. And also MDB and international community now view AIIB with more of course, still supportive, but more critical eye, and increasing the pressure on the bank to live up to its heightened reputation while navigating through a more complex and diverse operational landscape. So it is truly an honor and challenge to stand here before you to discuss innovative financing options for AIIB and learning from rich experiences of our distinguished panelists. A little bit on personal note, throughout my 30-year career in development banking, the pursuit of innovative financing has always been a constant theme from day one. I heard about it, talk about it. Our clients demand a broader spectrum of options with more competitive and accessible, affordable pricing. And simultaneously, international community, particularly forums like G20, urges us to operate as a cohesive system and leverage private sector involvement to achieve the scale and the ambition necessary for sustainable development. So today, we eagerly anticipate hearing about exemplary innovative financing solutions that have been successfully implemented across both public and private sectors. And we seek to glean insight from your experience and understanding and how we can enhance our ability to mobilize more financing, particularly the private capital, in a more efficient and catalytic manner. Of particular interest to us are your perspectives on risk distribution. How can we be more effectively allocate risks among stakeholders? And additionally, we are keen to explore strategies for increasing the pipeline of bankable project and development, and particularly for climate and green projects. These are critical elements in bridging the gap between the ambitious goals and tangible result. While I eagerly anticipate our fruitful and engaging discussion today, please also allow me to share a few innovative financing options I have been personally involved since joining AIIB 4 years ago. Of course, the public-private partnership remains a cornerstone of our approach. AIIB has a very strong private sector arm within our system. And my recent visit to India also revealed that for instance, hybrid annuity model continues to be a viable and bankable option across many sectors. So we are thinking of expanding this approach across infrastructure sectors. This model's success in balancing risk allocation between public and private entities offers valuable lessons, in my view. And for AIIB, the partial debt guarantee facility and policy-based financing, of course, other MDBs all have this, but for us, these are recently introduced and included in AIIB's toolbox, this will enable us to develop projects in critical areas such as conservation, biodiversity, and health through such as sovereign debt swaps, and we've been exploring different options in this regard. By linking debt relief to specific policy options, we can create a powerful incentive for sustainable development for countries with fiscal stress in particular. And we are also learning from our peers. For instance, the front-loading facility that Charles will share today, is an excellent example of cross-institutional knowledge sharing. And additionally, we are learning from other MDBs, and we are working on implementing, for instance, on FX foreign exchange hedging facility to tap into untapped domestic foreign savings and how to utilize that for green projects. This kind of incentive addresses a critical market inefficiency by introducing them. Finally, in many markets, the several bankability issues remain for the green projects, apart from what I mentioned, FX risk consideration, and as well as general financial viability concerns related to all green projects. Very often, the country's banking sector shows a lack of capacity in structuring project finance loans, and their preference for shorter loan tenor, and there is a need for credit enhancement to cover various project risks, such as sponsor risk, construction risk, and offtake risk, and so on. So all these factors add to the shortage of bank financing available for green energy and infrastructure projects. So again, we are back to innovative financing solutions to bridge the financing gap. MDBs, including AIIB, can and must design a bold and innovative financing facilities that will support relevant institutional structure in enabling and de-risking the flow of private investment into green economy by addressing the core concerns and risks of investors and lenders. So such as the risk I mentioned, needed credit enhancement and lack of project finance capacity, expertise, and so on, as well as to help improving existing punitive financial sector regulations. Financial sector regulation, this is important, that hinders the flow of private sector investment to green economy. That is why introduced we a policy-based lending facility just recently. So I'm coming to an end. So together we have the power to make a difference. And by harnessing the transformative potential of innovative financing, we can create a more sustainable and prosperous world for the future. Before I conclude, I would like to introduce today's moderator, my colleague, Mr. Rodrigo Salvador, the Director General of Operations Partnership Department, Partners in Crime. And Rodrigo is a passionate, you will find him, passionate development professional, and I have the privilege of working closely with him. With this, let me hand over to Rodrigo, the best MC. Thank you.
That works? You know, I don't think I need a microphone anyway. But so thank you so much, Hun. And again, we are going to keep this very fluid and interactive. And again, I think I'm very excited about these things for a couple of things. First of all, Hun didn't say this, right? But he's leading a very exciting new team in the bank, which is the Sector Themes and Financial Innovation team. And the reason why that team was created was precisely because we understood that, there was kind of a clash, right, between how we were doing innovation and the KPIs of the investment teams, right? Because you need to be actually creating and adding volume and meeting your volume KPIs. It's hard, to say we are going to take bets on new things that might have failed, right? They have a higher rate of failure, right? So basically the incentives and the objectives are different, right? So they're not going to be actually measured by how much they do, but how much innovation, how many exemplars they provide and they produce. And then that is actually going to get mainstream, right, into the organization. So I think that is, in fact, embracing the very nature of innovation. Because sometimes we actually forget that, yeah, you can do innovation, but if the organization actually doesn't follow that sort of, aim, then you're going to have problems, right? So I think, again, the how is as important as the what, right? And I think is that. So with that in mind, I'm very happy to also have this panel with me, have like all friends and new friends, right? So let me first start with just introductions. Jade, who is the advisor to the head of the Global Infrastructure Facility. Thank you, Jade, for being here. And then we have Kyriakos, Vice President of the AIIB. Only 1 year, right, in the job, but a long time in the business. Then we have Praveen, CEO of the Maharashtra Institute for Transformation. And then we have Charles, which we have been doing one thing or two in the last, 10 years, who is the head of head of the development finance mechanisms at the Gavi Alliance for Vaccines. So, and again, during the next, I think, hour, what we want actually out of this panel is to be very concrete, right? Innovation, everyone talks about innovation. Hun was saying, innovations are the things that we don't do, even if that thing, might be not rocket science for others, but, some of us are actually copying innovations from other institutions, and that also constitutes an innovation. So we will go first, on a round of questions about, how each of us, or how these institutions actually approach innovation. Then we will, I have a particular question about innovation upstream and how we can actually do that more, cooperate more on the origination. And then hopefully we land with a couple of concrete ideas that we like to take to practice, right? And I think, and then hopefully, we always said this is an aim, having questions from So we will really try to actually have questions from the audience, right, to actually do it in interactively. So, Jade, let me start with you. So obviously, the Global Infrastructure Facility is very important. You are in a particular place, right, in terms of PPPs. I don't know how many of these of our audience actually know what you do, right? So I would love you to actually start like telling a little bit about GIF, and then also how you actually approach innovation and how you see the overall spectrum of innovation right now happening and what you think is the role of GIF in that.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo, and good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to be here to really interact and share ideas with you. My name is Jade. I'm from the Global Infrastructure Facility. A quick introduction. Global Infrastructure Facility, we are a G20 initiative that was created in 2014. It is an open global platform really meant for collaboration between the public sectors and private sectors. And how we do that is really through our 11 MDB technical partners, which includes AIIB. And in this Asia region, we also actively work with ADB, World Bank, IFC, as well as MIGA. Our role is primarily really in the upstream space, as Rodrigo was saying, in terms of project preparation. We do both funding as well as advisory services support for project preparation to bring projects from conception to a state where it is attractive to bring in private sector participation. Today, just to share a little, we have supported project preparation in 172 projects in over 68 countries. This is over our 10-year track record, so we are really glad to have that collaboration with MDBs all over the place. But really to, I think, Rodrigo's point on innovation and where we see ourselves as a project preparation facility, I think it comes in terms of two perspectives, in terms of different contexts. So first, you have your traditional public-private partnerships. It may be economies or countries that are more equipped to do PPPs. In those places, we've heard from our private sector partners, whom we work quite closely with for inputs, that they really want to see a rinse and repeat. So they want to see things that have worked before, contracts that are standardized. They want to repeat that. They want to replicate that and scale that. So that is critical for us to close the $1 trillion gap in terms of infrastructure investments. But on the other hand, we are also very advocating and supportive of what Rodrigo mentioned, innovative approaches. And we think that's exactly the space where upstream should come in, where, in terms of project preparation, you try to define, you try to prepare with some little cost, a little bit of time to test if it works, before you actually go into the market and ask for private sector investments. So these can be in terms of newer sectors. Nowadays, we are looking at green hydrogen, carbon capture storage. You have also battery storage that comes with renewable. And if you think like 10, 15 years ago, we try to, and we like to think of it as where perhaps renewable energy was maybe even 20 years back, when solar, wind, and others were also considered innovative to the traditional energy. So we think that this is the space that we should come in very actively. Like you said, for innovation, anything that's new, the failure rate is high. But hopefully with upstream support, the cost of failure is low. And the most important for a facility like us is that we want to collect the lessons learned from all of this. And hopefully through our 11 MDB partners, we can actually share these lessons, disseminate them. Why does it not work? And in which country, which context it did not work? And what would have worked better? So I think that's the role that we see ourselves in terms of using public funding in an effective way to bring in innovation, both in terms of bringing in projects that are tangible, but also key lessons learned to actually develop newer infrastructure sectors.
Excellent. Jay, thank you so much. And then hold on that, because I would love in the next round to ask you more around like what is new in the PPP. PPP has been there for a long time. For me, PPP is pipeline, by the way. But I think it would be great to hear from you what is new there, right? Because there have been ups and downs in PPPs, right? It was like the answer to all our problems. Then it was like the worst of the things that you could think about. I'm coming from Argentina, and I know, right? And then now I think it's actually a bit like back on the saddle. So now next again, Kyriakos. quick question. I know I need to stay, on topic, but I would love first to get your sense of how AIIB is actually approaching innovation in general, right? And but then I know you have been doing again, and I before coming to AIIB, I was at the Gates Foundation, working very closely with Charles, right, on issues related to health. And when we were doing the COVID wars, right, many of the things that we had is actually how to help countries actually like work the liquidity constraints, right, in order to access, vaccines. And again, I had to say that AIIB was not only the first, but the only, right, to really step up in actually solving real problems that we all had and saving life, right? So, Kyriakos, if you can actually first, for people to say that the overall AIIB or innovation, and then you can actually tell us a little bit more about that, which again, it was an amazing innovation, a very good example.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. First of all, I would like to thank for the invitation to participate in this panel with the distinguished guests and fellow speakers. I mean, it's really my pleasure. Listening to Vice President, I have to say that it's AIIB really proved right the people who envisaged to create the bank. And the huge investment up in the world, in Asia and around the world, in Europe, we know it. It really needs us all the AFIs. I'm coming from the European Investment Bank, but I actually proved wrong the people who were hesitant at that time to create the AIIB. And my country, Cyprus, a small country in the Mediterranean, was also hesitant at that time, and we thought it was needed. But then it was a political decision to participate in the capital, and I was the honor, at that time also, to be appointed as a governor of the AIIB until my appointment as a AIIB vice president. So I see the progress of the bank these last few years. This is my third annual meeting. This is my third annual meeting that I'm participating, and I'm really pleased to see the progress of the bank and to see the results of the bank year after year. But mostly, and what I'm saying because I'm dealing with IFIs for 25 years, is that to see the impact on the people or in the countries that you are financing the project. Really very pleased about that, very pleased also for the subject of the panel. Right. I mean, innovative financing should be in a way we have to be innovative in order to respond to the needs of the people of the countries. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have to be innovative. What we did with after COVID, I mean, with COVAX Advanced Market Commitment, COVAX AMC, what it was at that time, for us, I was at the board of the bank at that time, and it was really amazing. We really moved fast in the year 2020, around April, if I remember, after COVID-19. Initially, we approved a loan for 400 million euros for COVAX at AMC. And then in 2021, we approved a new financing in order to strengthen the support for global distribution of COVID-19 vaccine through the COVAX initiative. Right. I'm sure that my colleague will say more on that. With all the other IFIs, MTBs, cooperation, it's number one. I mean, we are needed everywhere. This is an excellent initiative. Very proud that we did it, and we managed to reach the vaccines, to send the vaccines, and reach at the proper time. And this is what is the important thing. And we're going to continue this initiative with more and in more other sectors, like in providing healthcare to the poorest countries. I'm very glad that since we're in Uzbekistan to say that I'm glad that we co-finance 3 solar panel projects here in Uzbekistan together with the ASEAN AIIB, the ASEAN Development Bank, and the EBRD. It's a project that really meets the needs of the country in renewables, and we're very glad we did it.
Excellent. And I think I think it's a very good point about innovation needs to be client-driven and solution-driven. So sometimes, like we actually go in a coffee and then start like thinking about innovation. But actually, it's actually meant to solve real problems. And the problem that you sort out, again, I mean, Charles will talk about a little bit more about that, but that was a real problem that we had at that time, which is countries didn't have the liquidity to actually buy vaccines. So people were dying because they couldn't actually get the money to buy the vaccines. And no one was stepping up to actually do that. And I had to say at that point, it was kind of shameful, right? And I was on the Gates Foundation side and seeing the lack of response and lack of local leadership. So having AIIB actually stepping up and doing that and taking the risk, because it was a huge risk, right? It was amazing. So, Charles, I will go in a minute with you to a little bit on that. But again, I mean, I also quería, because I think that the point about, client-driven innovation is extremely relevant. I think, we need to keep that. So, Praveen. Hello. I don't know much about the Institute, frankly, myself. So I would love for you to actually tell us more about it. And also, again, infrastructure seems very boring, right? But there's a lot of exciting things happening in infrastructure. Jade also made another point about innovation happening because we really don't know the things that we are going to be funding in 3 years' time. And I think, the different things might need different approaches, right? Like funding hydrogen might be totally different from the things that we are doing today, battery storage, etc. So we need to actually do. So how are you seeing the actual innovation in infrastructure and the role of the Institute in that?
Thank you, AIIB, for organizing this absolutely topical issue here. And thanks for giving this opportunity. So Maharashtra Institution for Transformation is like the planning commission or the planning body for Maharashtra state, which is the leading industrial province of Maharashtra. Recently, we did, Maharashtra's economy is right now $500 billion US. And Prime Minister Modi has given the goal that we will reach 5 trillion in the next 7 to 8 years as India. So Maharashtra has planned, Maharashtra Institution for Transformation, to reach 1 trillion by 2028. Now, $1 trillion economy, that means the incremental investment at our current ICOR, that is incremental capital output ratio, which is roughly around 5, is 1.5 trillion US dollars if we can become more efficient. So that's the level of investment. Now, coming to AIIB, so sorry, but I'll make a couple of provocative statements. So recently we had entire 18 executive directors of the World Bank in India visiting. And one of the questions they asked was, what is it that the World Bank can do better for India, because India is one of the main borrowers. And before I could say something, the Chinese director said, yes, and our hard infrastructure percentage is only 18. Actually, I checked up, it is 41%. That is the world. Of the total portfolio across the world, the World Bank puts only about 41% on hard infrastructure. ADB is a little bit better, 50%. Even the one that goes into 41%, a lot of it is consultancies. Right. A very small percentage of it is actually brick and mortar, which helps the countries. Right. Now, if that being said so, when we thought that, oh, why is there a new bank? There is already an ADB, that's your core competency. Yeah. That you can go fully for infrastructure funding and not go too much on the softer issues, because for countries like India, Vietnam, and many others, policies and soft issues are already there. Right. It's the inability to transfer the soft ideas into hard infrastructure, which is the missing link. So that's my point one. That's the great advantage of AIIB, that you can go without being embarrassed, without being too much issues about social, this, that, go straight into hard infrastructure. Because as I told you, 1.5 trillion is the gap just in one province of Maharashtra. Now, if you go to the second part, how do we do this innovatively? The money doesn't come anywhere. So recently, what we did in Maharashtra, I don't know if Jay can project one picture of a trans-harbor link. Yeah, I wanted to show you one bridge. It is one of the longest bridges built in Mumbai. Can we just, yeah. So this bridge, I don't know, we can't see the bridge. You can go to the second, yeah. So this is the 22-kilometer bridge. When I joined service, is a trans-harbor link. That was 35 years ago. This was on the drawing board in the chief secretary's office. When I was about to retire 30 years later, it was still on the drawing board. No. Then, our new chief minister came, I was his secretary, said, how do we fund such a huge investment? We can't put, it's about $2.2 billion, and we can't take away so much money from farmers, or farmers need money, small industrialists money, and put it just to build an infrastructure in Mumbai city. So we used Land Premium Surplus Organization called MMRDA. So MMRDA is a body which aggregates land and sells it for construction. It had a surplus of $155 billion. And generally to borrow from abroad, we need to give a sovereign guarantee. But the state government was not willing to give a sovereign guarantee because we need to borrow to help farmers and not for building this. Right. So we changed the policy that if you have a government organization which has a AAA rating, then we can do international borrowing with the rating of this organization. This is the first change which was made. This enabled the funds to come. Today you can go in 15 minutes on this road, which would have otherwise costed, which would have taken about 3 hours to go. So my second point is that how do we make use of domestic innovativities and tie these to international funding. My last point is on what we are doing with AIIB. So in Maharashtra, the biggest problem that across India is most of our energy utilities are loss-making. So we are talking about investing in hydrogen. How can we invest in hydrogen and pay for the electricity if most of the electricity utilities are making huge losses and running on? Right. So we went to AIIB, and Mr. Hoon was there, and Mr. Rajat Mishra, and we said, okay, the reason why utilities are making losses is because no political leader wants to make a full bill, energy bill, to the farmers, because farmers are not well off, so they subsidize the farmers, which leads to a couple of $1 billion of subsidy just in our state, which means the state utility is not able to run. So it overcharges the industries. So industries have to pay 10 times the electricity bill while the farmers get it free. Now, how does AIIB come in? So we negotiated a loan of $1.1 billion to completely change the farmers to solar energy. That project is underway. Now, solar energy doesn't have a recurring cost. So all the farmers will go off the main grid, in which case the state utility becomes profit earning and has a borrowing capacity. So solar energy, farmers which are decentralized and not from a central grid, and AIIB funds to make the transition, not at small scale, because if you do small scale, every year more than 100,000 new farmers are coming for loan, but at scale. Wow. So these were the two big issues which I thought.
Great. All right. Wow. That's very good. Super cool. Yeah, right. I want to see that bridge, actually. But again, I mean, that's a couple of things, right? One is that these things, actually, the regulation and understanding in the regulatory environment that you are operating is extremely relevant, right? And sometimes the innovation is not only financial, but regulatory, right? There's boring stuff, not so sexy, but it still is super important, right? So, so thank you for that. Hopefully you have like other surprises for us for the next rounds. Right? But anyway, Charles. So again, with Charles, we have been working for a long time. Obviously, you are now in Gavi, and again, the things that you're doing with the AIIB. But I would love also broader than that, right? You have been working on financial innovation for a long time, and again, delivering very, very concrete solutions for problems that people face. So I would love your sense of how innovation actually is, the state of innovation right now, but also how Gavi actually is using this. And then obviously if you can actually more details of the things that you're doing, around front loading. And also I know also you're working with the AIIB on a couple of cool things.
Okay, well, look, thanks, Rodrigo. It's great to be here. It's my first time at the annual meetings and first time in this incredible country. I'm looking forward to visiting the center a little bit later. I'm humbled as well to be on this panel with innovators like yourselves. Rodrigo mentioned COVAX and Kyriakos' support, but also the global financing facility wouldn't be what it is without your support. So I want to say how honored I am to be here. So look, for those of you who are less familiar with Gavi, we're the Global Fund for Vaccines. We have the mandate to immunize about 1 in every 2 children in the world. We work in about 80 low and middle income countries. And we work both on routine immunizations like pneumococcal or HPV, as well as outbreaks like COVID-19, and now we're responding to Mpox. And to give a sense of scale, in the next 10 years, we'll immunize about 1 billion children. So this stuff really saves lives. We call it health infrastructure, but it's more sovereign infrastructure we're talking about. And from the start, Gavi has had financial innovation at its core. We were set up really to shape the market for vaccines for low-income populations. But more recently, we've worked on front-loading and also on domestic resource mobilization. So I want to come back to Rodrigo's question on, what are we doing that's innovative, and I'm going to focus on 2 types of front-loading mechanisms that we have used. We've mobilized about $10 billion so far through those mechanisms. And what do we mean by front-loading? It's this sort of Gavi jargon. It's quite simple. We fund ourselves with donor contributions from the US, the UK, many different sovereign donors. What front-loading does for those donors is allow them to pledge now and pay later. Right. So we can spread their contributions over many years and access the funding now. So there are 2 ways we're using that. One is vaccine bonds. So we set up about a decade and a half ago a AAA rated entity. It's like a special purpose vehicle. And through that we've issued over $8 billion in vaccine bonds. So this is where the proceeds are used for immunization. And those are secured against very long-term contributions from donors to Gavi. So they pledge over 10 or 20 years. Right. And those, as those contributions come in, they repay the bonds. We're seeing a lot of demand for that vehicle. It's called IFIM. And we've had it's had a big contribution to Gavi's performance. So that's the first type of front loading that we use. The second is what I call surge financing, and this is really learning from the experience in COVID, where it took many months to mobilize cash to buy vaccines for low-income populations, essentially putting COVAX at the back of the queue. And we were able, with the support of partners like Kyriakos, so with the European Investment Bank and the US Development Finance Corporation, we put $2 billion of liquidity lines in place that allowed us to take pledges from donors and put that money to work much faster in buying vaccines for those poorer populations. These are much shorter term liquidity instruments. They're 1 to 5 years in duration, unlike IFIM, which is 10 to 20 years. And now we're seeing with Mpox, both of those mechanisms are ready to go in case the emergency becomes worse and we need to respond more rapidly. So those are two examples of how we're using innovation. And the last thing I wanted to say is just the power of partnerships, that we can't do this alone. Right. We know what our corner of the field is in Gavi, and we try to work with multilateral development banks, development finance institutions, private sector, to bring these innovations to market. And we're exploring now with AIIB and VP Hood to AIIB member states in the future.
Hold on that for the next one. But I want to make something very clear here. Those times of the COVID were really, really tough. I mean, we all know, right? And again, I know all of you also do. And again, the capacity to actually do innovation rapidly is very important. But also that actually reminds us that it's not only about like having great ideas. I mean, Praveen just said that it's also about regulatory innovation. It's also about leadership. Innovation takes leadership, right? I mean, taking risk is not only financial risk, but also is decision-making risk. So you need, like institutions like AIIB stepping up and saying, we are going to do this, Gavi, and again, I mean, I think we lack, during COVID, I think we lack a lot of that leadership, right? And we really suffer for that. So again, Charles has been very humble, but again, the power and the impact that actually had during those years was amazing. And I think, Gavi doing more of that, that's great. Really, innovation is saving lives. So next, again, I mean, Jade, you mentioned, again, about like PPPs. I mean, one of the things that we are saying, or we are, I think, discovering right now is that we probably need to innovate earlier on in the project cycle. Right, so we are finalists in the AIIB. We are finding that we are actually collaborating too late. We're all fighting for the small project that actually are bankable. Some brains, I don't know, 10 years ago came with the idea that we shouldn't collaborate too much because that will actually reduce our tickets, right? Without saying, well, what about if we actually collaborate each other to actually get more tickets, right, and more projects? Again, this is not rocket science, it's kind of straightforward. But this is the power of upstream collaboration, right? And Jay, you alluded to it. So I would like this round of questions to get from each of you of that. I mean, project design, project preparation, how we can do that better, right? And again, I don't think this is about creating new facilities, which are like zombies, right? They never died. I never saw a fund that is actually dies, right? These funds don't do anything and they stay there, right, forever, right? Like call it zombie funds. So this is not about like facilities, but actually coordinating, right? Like lowering transaction costs. We have, AIIB something called TA pooling, which actually that means that we actually put together our resources for TA, right? And we just agree that we are going to do something for a long time, for some time, more systematically, right? And I think, Charles, also that goes to some of the things that we are having with Gavi, right? With AIIB and all that. So Jade, we'd love to hear what you're doing on that, what is the aim of GIF on that, and also, again, I said before, how that can be applied to the PPP space.
Thank you so much. And really, I think just to start off, AIIB has an exceptional collaborator with GIF, but also with the other MDBs. Like you said, I think the space is huge, right? There's not really so much of a crowding out. I mean, we have trillions of dollars of gap. So we are really looking as GIF to AIIB as kind of like really taking the leadership, if you would, in some ways in this whole of MDB approach. So we really appreciate it and we hope to continue to strengthen that. You asked about PPP. Maybe I would just cite a tangible example. So we've supported AIIB in Bangladesh on a North Dhaka digitization project in the healthcare sector. So again, I think that is really a very successful example of the innovation that AIIB has been bringing, both in terms of digital, but also in terms of bringing the PPP approach to the healthcare sector in Bangladesh. As we know that bringing private sector to healthcare infrastructure compared to economic infrastructure is not such an easy proposition for the private sector, for those who have a mandate across to choose from. So we supported AIIB in really defining and preparing the project early on, upstream, so that the government can build in all the important features that the private sector would want to look at when the project eventually hits the market, and bring in technology to actually increase access to healthcare and to cope with the rapid urbanization of the country. It's by itself an innovative approach for a country that really is coping with many issues at the same time. So AIIB was very open in our experience, inviting us to participate in the workshop, in some of the project preparation and engagement with the government, and really advancing a lot of standards on social and environment. And I think that all always builds back to improving the delivery of the project. Right. We heard that in Bangladesh, one of the key issues is during rainy seasons, there is more needs for certain kind of vaccination. So that all builds into the healthcare and the delivery of the project, the services that it prepares. So it's an all-round approach, and we really appreciate that. And to your point on project preparation and pipeline, I mean, we can't agree more. In our experience, project preparation, especially for infrastructure, takes time. Generally, depending on circumstances and readiness of the project, it can range from 24 to 36 months to take the project from conception to commercial and financial close, if we are lucky. So, and generally, the total cost of project preparation is around, that we have seen, 5 to 10% of the total project investment cost. So it's still a very, if you would, a very value for money investment, if you would, in the whole bigger picture. And it brings back to project facilities, right? Like be it the GIF or the special funds and MCDF housed in AIIB. ADB has their own AP3F. There are other facilities in the ecosystem. Right. And I think that's really crucial to help to promote projects that are well planned, value for money for the government, sustainable and well executed. As we know, infrastructure projects, from social, it can go from 15 to 20 years, or economic infrastructure from 25 to 30 years. So having a project that caters to the demands of the people, that can be bankable, that can be self-sustainable, generating revenues, I think that's very important. So investing that time, that 5 to 10% in good project preparation, right. Especially in more innovative sectors or otherwise, it's key, and we hope that that we can continue, and we can continue to collaborate with AIIB, be it in terms of the project preparation, your journey of living up to the heightened reputation. We hope that we can support the AIIB on the way and work with the special funds, because like you said, TA pooling, again, I think there's no shortage of, if you would, space. We would love to actually partner with other funds to come in on project preparation. Right. Yeah.
Great, Jane, and thank you for that. And again, I mean, also leverage, right? Donors are always looking for leverage. And what we found in the AIIB is actually, for each dollar that we invest in our project preparation fund, you know how much money we create in project? $69. So 1 to 69 leverage. When you go downstream, when you go to project, that leverage goes to 1 to 15, 1 to 10, and there are a lot of creative accounting on that, right? But I can tell you, right? I mean, the actually highest leverage is in the project preparation stage. And I think, I really like, Jay, what you said about, also this is about the risking. We always talk about the risking in terms of like financial de-risking, like in financial engineering, but actually more money in project preparation, more grants in project preparation is actually a great element of the risking, right? So I think that's great. So Kyriakos, to you, all right, AIIB, right? Also, we'd love to get your sense of this upstream, innovation and how, you're doing it from the AIIB side.
Many, many cases, I have to say. But the first one, it came to my mind, it's not in my briefing. But in 2014, when UK took the presidency of the Commission at the time, he came with this idea, his plan, what it stayed as a UK plan. He wanted really to address the investment gap in Europe at that time. Right. So he approached the AIIB, and we created the EFSI, European Fund for Strategic Investment. Okay. Eventually, this fund, I mean, it was with the European Investment Bank was implementing it with commission guarantees. Mm-hmm. And with, I think, if I remember the numbers, 21 point something billion euro guarantees. We leverage, as you said, projects of 300 billion euros, 315 billion euros. This is the leverage, the 115 you said, actually, it really reminded me. The successor of the UK plan of the FC is the InvestEU. It's currently a similar one, provision of guarantees by the Commission. Right. And but now implementing partners, it's more than AIIB. Most of it, we have the share, the lion's share, but there are other implementing partners also. Right. On both schemes, the InvestEU and the Juncker plan, it was 3 pillars. I mean, the second pillar is advisory. It's what you said, really to prepare the projects and to prepare it, to make them bankable, and make it, and it's working. I mean, it's AIIB has a long history of advisory, I have to say. We have a very strong team of more than 300 people. We have Jasper, which is, we use a lot of acronyms at the AIIB, which is, it's a major instrument to prepare in the member states, but also the new member states and the member states who are going to accede to prepare the projects. And we're doing a lot of work over there, and we encourage people, I mean, really to approach us on advising. And we provide advisory not just inside the EU, but also outside the EU. And it's, let me tell you one other thing about how we were innovative because of the COVID. I mean, as you said, COVID really marked our lives. Right. And after the COVID, I mean, the European Investment Bank who created the European Guarantee Fund. Yes. It was a guarantee fund by not by the Commission this time, by the member states. Right. We had it ready, I mean, when it was the COVID, we had it ready in May. And I remember long, on the phone meetings, which were terrible. The technology at that time, I mean, really, to have 100 people connected, it was really very. But for long hours, until sometimes 10 hours, 10 o'clock in the evening, and sometimes because of the time difference, it's really. But we did manage to put together guarantees of the 25 member states. 2 member states didn't participate, around 25 billion, more than it, and with leverage, again, 1 to 15, something like that.
Yes, I do think that also, you mentioned a couple of things, right? The use of guarantees, right? I think that we don't use that enough, right? And again, there are some issues about that. But again, I mean, we're discussing also in the context of Gavi, how donors can use more guarantees, and they have like more multiplier effect, right? Actually, some of the pledges, instead of like pledging in cash, you can pledge in guarantees. You don't need to actually have a lot of provision there, and actually you can multiply that financing, right? I mean, I'm not saying, I'm saying on top, Charles. Please give money to Gavi, all of us. But I think, again, we need to be more creative. And I think the other thing is, again, I think we also need to unionize more, right, across NDBs, including Jade, to actually leverage you, right? If we have joint proposal from AIIB, from EIB together with the Islamic Development Bank, with the Asian Development Bank, we can actually leverage you more, and then we can bring together that idea that it's only GIF or it's NCDF, or, it should be all of us together. Praveen, so you mentioned before, right, all those issues about like regulation and all that, but from your perspective and the work that the Institute is doing, right, what are the things that the gaps, right? Can you tell us a little bit the gaps? And obviously in India, but also outside, right? What are the things that we should do more? You can be provocative, it's fine. Is this live stream? No. Okay, we can then edit it. But what are the gaps, and what structure you have for us?
I think you, Rodrigo, pointed out to the gap, which is that you have various international facilities and they never die.
Right, they never die.
And they create an aspiration of fulfillment, but they don't fulfill them. Climate facilities being one example. I just want to tell Jai to just put up. So, one thing which is very interesting is, yeah, again, another board, but this is a very interesting example. Has anybody visited the Sheridor Mosque in Uzbekistan? The Sheridor Mosque at Registan, have you visited? So there is a tiger picture there. On the top of the mosque, there is a tiger picture there. There are no more wild tigers in Uzbekistan and none in China, and most. In India, we still have them, though our population is large. So it has something to do with this. We created this global facility fund, promised the damaged resources. After the 3 COPs, the funds never came. And if all countries keep expecting the funds to come up so that they will mitigate the climate change or restore biodiversity, we'll lose all the biodiversity. So what are we doing in India and through our Mitra organization? Can we go to the next one, please? The next slide. Yeah, so basically the tigers can pay for themselves. Just like most of biodiversity, they can pay. You talked about the revenue model. So the main problem with most infrastructure, including natural capital, is that we don't have a viable revenue model. We can invest, but the state has to create the repayment capacity from its tax revenue. And most countries are already overtaxed, and popularly it's not a good thing to tax more to pay for more loans. So in this model, what we did is we created a partnership, a live partnership between tigers and women. So if you see, at that time when this was not there, most of the man-eating which happened by tigers was of women, because women were working out in the forests and then the tigers. So we did a digital system which provides entry into the national parks. We jacked up the user fee rates. It creates something like $5 million of revenue, which goes straight, next and last slide, yeah. It goes straight to fund the women to move away from fuel wood, which they collect from the forest and therefore come in the way of the tigers. And it's now funded by the tigers' revenue from the tourism for the biogas or the cooking gas. So all the women now have cooking gas, more than 100,000 families. So there's no interface with the tigers. The tigers generate the revenue through tourism, which goes here. So we don't need to wait for the facility. There's hardly any man-eating now in this. I wanted to say my last point that the biggest problem with PPP, what you mentioned, was that we only think of PPP as a model between government and a private corporate sector. And then there is a huge hit back when the private corporate sector makes a lot of money. Like in India, many PPP projects got closed because though it was successful, but they said, oh, they made too much more profit than what was supposed to have been made. But the PPP model ideally is between the community and the government. So here it's the women who are getting the cooking gas and who are paying our individual citizens. So if we can do this, then most of the banks can come out of this. My last point was on the rate of interest. So you see what's happening now is that most development banks, whether it is World Bank, ADB, or your AIIB, and the domestic rate of interest in India is almost equal. So then why should a country like India, which has a good repayment, go to, let's say, World Bank, if you can borrow the same? So you talked about the pre-preparation. Now, for a World Bank project, it could take 1 year to 2 years for pre-preparation. So we built the Mumbai-Nagpur highway in 2 years. The project preparation period for the bank would have taken that much time. But the money came from domestic banks at the same rate of interest. The rate of interest is exactly the same as what was coming from the bank. So my big question today is, if we can speed up the pre-preparation to accept existing projects. You see, most countries have a big pipeline of existing projects. But because the banks from outside want to look at them from their own, so they reformulate the same projects, but with much more, let's say, conceptual things, which takes a lot of time. And then in the process, it's no longer viable to get outside funding when you can do the same within 2 months. Like the State Bank of India took 2 months to provide that sort of funding. But if you, so I would say that take existing projects or half-done projects which meet normal standards and go for them, and don't spend too much time on pre-preparation for large infra projects. Otherwise, most countries like India, Vietnam and all will switch to their domestic sources of finance.
Very good. A very practical solution. I think that, again, I mean, the AIIB is trying to do that also with ASEAN, for example, Central Asia, right? Looking into the pipeline. And again, I mean, I think that in many cases, that also is about like client-driven, demand-driven innovation, right? And making do that. My sense, I have to say, my sense is also even, so the upstream and the earlier engagement with governments also makes sense, even before. Right? Because again, it's like also fatigue. If they take it to a point that then we cannot go, right? And you have to redo a lot of the things, right? So I think that, that sort of upstream goes a long way. So Charles, again, I mean, also, I know you're also innovating in the way you are engaging earlier with partners, right? In designing things and programs to help countries, right? To achieve, the targets in innovation in immunization. So can you talk about a little bit that? I mean, and also, and again, the same question to you, right? What are you asking from us? Right, NDVs and others, the partners here, that to help Gavi most.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a bit about the challenge of what we call transition. So in Gavi, we taper our support down to countries as they get wealthier. So we're not aspiring to provide vaccines for countries forever. We want the countries to build their own sustainable sources of financing to take over the cost of the vaccines and the health systems as they get wealthier. That's a big challenge. We have a few dozen countries that are either side of transition, and no matter how softly we taper our support, there's always a hurdle to take over that last part. So we're working with several of the multilateral development banks on how we can provide support both upstream in project preparation and TA, supervision, analytics, that kind of support, but also downstream in providing an interest rate buy down or subsidy, to help make the loans, the MDB credits, more affordable for countries so that they can access MDB financing as a way to bridge the gap that Gavi leaves before they can build their domestic financing. So we're looking at that very actively in transition countries. We've already worked with the World Bank in about a dozen countries, which we've seen has enormous leverage. We've catalyzed or mobilized something like $2 billion in those countries of joint financing from the World Bank, where that's being used for health and immunization systems. But we see a much bigger, to your point on pipeline, we see a much bigger demand from countries for that kind of support. Yeah, I mean, we'd love to talk with AIIB about that as well.
Right, and again, I mean, I think that obviously has to do with, again, we always think about like what are the assets that we need to fund, right? But a lot of this actually maintaining immunization has to do with the capacity of the health systems, right? And there's a lot of infrastructure to do, digital, physical, right? So it's not only about procurement, right? Vaccine is not only about procurement. And that's also the other thing, right? We need to understand what is the nature of the interventions and the nature of this. But a lot of countries need to build that infrastructure to keep, the immunization rates up.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, if we want to, many of these countries are trying to introduce new vaccines, whether it's HPV or in the next few years we'll have TB, a new TB vaccine. That requires, there's a huge hump in investment that countries have to make in order to upgrade their systems to introduce those vaccines. So that it isn't just the procurement cost of the vaccine, it's also the upgrading the system so that they're able to deliver.
Right. So great. Thank you so much. I mean, I think, I will ask you then, last point from you, and then we can have a few minutes for questions from the audience. But, again, we talk about a couple of things there. One is innovation. I think that a couple of things I pick up from the conversation just now. Innovation is only financing, but also regulation, right? I think that's a very important one. The other one is about the need for client demand innovations, that we actually are solving problems from people, right, and from our clients. And I think sometimes we forget about that. The other one is actually the sort of the innovation is actually, or project preparation is also actually de-risking, right? And that's another element of the risking that we should be looking at such, right? In particular also when we do our private capital mobilization and other things. Sometimes those things actually are not taken into consideration early on. And then the other thing I have in this one is that we should be pulling more, unionizing more, right? Again, I mean, Praveen was saying, I'm joking, but not joking about the zombie funds and the facilities, that they don't talk to each other, right? They are like, oh, right, but they don't, they don't interact. And we should actually talk more about that and see how we can leverage each other more. Right. So 1 minute each of you right now, a cool thing that you are working on or you would like to see, and also, a plea for, you are in the AIIB annual meeting, so you can actually ask us things to the AIIB. But one or two things that you would like to see happening, right, in the next 12 months in terms of innovation.
Thank you. Just a brief one to wrap up. I know we are running out on time. So one of the innovative things that GIF is supporting currently, and I see a lot of potential to replicate with AIIB. AIIB has only been partner to GIF for 3 years. In Malawi, we supported the Patamanga hydropower project, which took 5 years of project preparation before it reached commercial close in 2022. It has innovation in terms of the upstream preparation. So for context, Malawi only has, as a population, 12% of them have connection to the grid, have access to energy. So the 350 megawatt Patamanga hydropower project really doubled basically the country's renewable mix, as well as installed hydropower capacity, providing actually electricity to 10% of the population, to 2 million people. So the innovation that we glean, the lessons learned, is really threefold, right? First, in the context of the country, it was really key to provide, to get inputs directly from credible private sector investors who had experience in terms of preparing and constructing, operating and maintaining such projects. So upfront, engage the private sector upfront, compared to more mature markets where you tend to actually hire advisories and consultancies to do the project preparation. Secondly, it was really working very closely with the government of Malawi in that case to understand what it took for them to click, right, in terms of the financial terms, in order for them to clear their processes to award the contract. So working very closely through our partner, IFC at that time, over 2-year period, so that you can build that in directly in the project preparation, in the contractual structure, in engaging the private sector, so that they are also basically well attuned. So the project closed with the winning consortium of EDF and SCATEC, as well as ISC coming in. MEGA is looking to provide guarantees possibly, and World Bank led the project preparation. So I think bring that back to AIIB, and what we hope to share as a next successful example in the next panel is given AIIB's strength in really your regional focus, as well as your focus on infrastructure, and particularly on digital and on collaboration in a more whole of MDB approach in the region. We, GIF, as a neutral platform, we hope that we will be able to act as honest broker with other fellow facilities in this journey to convene this upstream, midstream, downstream life cycle. Infrastructure is a very multi-stakeholder process, and alignment of interest is often what we see as what makes a project succeed or fail. So hopefully, together with other facilities, we can play that convening role, that honest broker role, and together with AIIB's collaborative and innovative approach as a relatively younger MDB, we can actually, have more of such successful examples.
Great, thank you so much, Jade, and definitely we are up for the game, and hopefully can take less than 4 years, right? Like we can actually cut it to 2 years if we do it with AIIB. Kyriakos, so from your end, like AIIB, like, one or two things that you like to do, and obviously if you have like things that you like to do with the AIIB, we're very happy to hear them.
It's different what is needed to do and what I like to do. I mean,
well,
it's,
right.
No, those is very related.
Both.
We have to do a lot, I have to say, in order to face, to deal with the climate threat, because it's a threat in many of our countries. We have to do a lot for grid transition. We really have to eliminate fossil fuel oil and go to zero emissions. Personally, I want to see more to invest immediately on battery, electricity in batteries. I mean, for storage of electricity. It's every time that we have a lot of projects in for the batteries for the cars, for the electric cars now, because it's for problem. But I think we are falling behind on this issue because we we're investing a lot in renewables, and we're facing the issue of electricity storage. Right. And also, to do that, also we have to invest on our distribution systems in order to absorb the renewable energy that we're producing. I mean,
Love it.
it's
Very
a lot
concrete. And I think also that actually matches very well with the PPP. I mean, you need work with governments, right, with the private sector and those things, very closely, right? So the whole thing actually is one application, right, that we have to get right.
I love the PPPs and the issue to discuss. I avoided to say anything, but it's it's an issue by itself.
You're on record. I think
and I mean, again, it's for every country. It's really a challenge. I mean, to go to that direction.
Right. I mean,
But because before becoming vice president of the AIIB, I was a civil servant in Cyprus. It's at the Ministry of Finance. Every ministry really wants to save money. I mean, to really have these fiscal issues, and they really want to invest it to go to that direction. But it has to be in a way that it's imbalanced. And as you said, there were the ups and downs.
Right.
In Europe, it's down definitely right now. But we have a very good team here also at the AIIB. They work. I was surprised actually that we have live projects of PPPs every year.
And I think that there is also blended finance, right, from institutions like AIIB, for example, and others. And I think, my sense is that when you're talking about the playbook around these things in innovation, I mean, I think that we should have kind of a playbook for innovation when we talk about COP, when we talk about FFD4, right? But I think it should be something of that we can actually create in kind of like those things and solving specific problems, right? And how we're going to put us on the center of that. Again, that's something that coming from New York, for a discussion with the UN Secretary General, and one of the questions was, can we have like something for FFD4, right? The Finance for Development in Sevilla next year, and we should put like a playbook for that, and again, something that is very concrete. Praveen, what is your playbook? What is your winning? Pick a winner.
Just half a minute one. Don't go for just mobilizing private corporate capital. Go to the sovereign funds like ADIA, Canadian pension funds, and others. Only thing they need is security. You see, we talk to them a lot.
They want returns, and
they don't even need a high rate of
return. They just want returns.
No, but that's what you guarantee. As a multilateral bank with member states, they just need the money to come back. See, they are very scared of lending to individual countries.
Right.
And so therefore they are sitting on huge amounts of capital. Their expectation is not even 1% in terms of return.
Right.
So if AIIB can assure very quick conversion of that surplus into projects which are secure, that is the money will come back, you can get access to this fund. And one of the biggest areas where you should do that is in green or in natural capital. It's basically restoring biodiversity, 1/3 of our nature back. If you do these two big things, you'll be really a big innovative bank.
I think that we should take also the Mubadalas and the Temasek. I mean, these are things that we are discussing, right? But they need a little bit of risk absorption capital. So there is a question right now around first laws, second laws, right? How we can, do that, or like NDB is doing more of that in our own balance sheet. We have been trying to do it with philanthropies and all that. That's a little bit difficult. But I think there is a push on doing that. These guys, they still want the 18%, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, at least from my discussions in Dubai. But anyway, I think that if we can convince them that they can take 13, that would be awesome. So I think that should be. Pick your winner, Charles.
Can I give two?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're working on two things at the moment that I'm most excited about. One is on climate adaptation. So half of our vaccines in Gavi are climate-sensitive vaccines, things like yellow fever, where the projections are that Canada is going to have yellow fever if we continue on the current trajectory. So we're working together actually with AIIB on quantifying the climate adaptation benefits of investments in health and immunization in MDB investments, so that we can unlock, MDBs can count those health investments as true adaptation investments. So that's one thing. The other is on innovation scale up, where we have a pipeline of vaccine delivery innovations in Gavi. These are companies like Zipline, which does drone-based delivery of vaccines. What we've seen over the years is that for every Zipline that has raised billions of dollars in private capital, there are 3 or 4 other winners that have struggled to scale. So we're raising, looking at raising a fund that will provide, very flexible support to scale up those kind of innovations. So those are two things that I'm most excited about.
And again, I want to come back to that, because Praveen, I really think that, again, these things actually, we have to advocate more for these things. I really mean it in terms of like meeting in the middle when it comes to returns, right? If we still want to make 20% in renewables in frontier market, that will not happen. And the fact that we need to look for catalytic capital to actually cover risks that are not, so it's a symmetry of information there, but I think it's actually a lot of, going there and advocating and leadership from those funds also to come and do that. All right, so I see already, but people, I don't know, Hun, we should have like questions from the, I don't know who is like, yeah, right? I am in charge, okay. So, yes, so, yeah, we're going to take a couple of questions. We are going to do a round of questions, and then, you can ask any particular panelist, or then we are going to pick, the answers.
Well,
please say who you are.
My name is Arvind Mathur. I am a former staff of the Asian Development Bank, where I worked for 2 decades and currently run the ESG Association of India.
Right.
So congratulations for this fantastic session today. I think all the panelists made some really nice comments. My question is directed at Charles Behan. Charles, you mentioned this innovative bonds for vaccine financing. I would like to know, first of all, who the beneficiaries are. How do you price these bonds? Is there an element of subsidy in these bonds, in the bonds pricing? Would love your comments.
Great. Yes. Your hand, yes.
Thanks. My name is Eugene Simonev. I represent Rivers Without Boundaries International Coalition. And my question is to Mr. Kakouris, Vice President of European Investment Bank. Recently, in terms of financing modes, we observe that AIIB and now EIB are more and more teaming up in big groups of financiers for large projects. And it reduces the risks for particular banks, but in our observation, sometimes has a risk to increase risks of particular projects. One of good examples is Rangoon hydropower project, which is being led by the World Bank and allegedly co-financed by AIIB, EIB, 3 or 5 Arab funds, ADB, name it. My question is, then we have a project of this magnitude in which you delegate the responsibility for environmental and social assessment to another bank's policies, like in this case World Bank, and you see that the bank is not fully conforming with its own standards, and it gives a loophole like 50,000 people resettlement without clear prospects to avoid it, or the downstream impacts from the huge dam, which are not assessed fully, and World Heritage Site that could be damaged with great certainty. What are your tools to friendly bring it back on track so it coincides with your own environmental standards? Your bank has one of the best standards of hydropower, very well supplemented by guidelines. So what are the tools in this financing mode of many banks to bring the lead bank in your financing arrangement back on track in terms of really preparing a project that will not cause major trouble?
Right. Thank you so much. More questions? Any more? Okay. Okay. We go. Charles?
Yeah, so the gentleman at the front, so the vaccine bonds are issued by what is called the International Financing Facility for Immunization. So that's a AAA-rated entity that's Gavi set up. And they're issued through the World Bank. So they're not, there's no subsidy involved. They're priced like other World Bank bonds. On the question on beneficiaries, all of the proceeds are dispersed through Gavi. So the IFRIM issues the bonds, and then the money that's raised passes to Gavi and goes exactly the same way as donor contributions to low-income and low-middle-income populations. And we use that to support health system strengthening or vaccine procurement on behalf of those populations. Right. Yeah, I mean, there's no they trade just like other World Bank bonds, but there's no subsidy involved. No.
I mean, what you're getting is basically you get better pricing on the bonds because you are, against or backed against the pledges, right, by donors. That's what you're getting, right? But there's no which again I think is an amazing idea. Yes. I also have some thoughts about the Rogun project, but yeah. Well.
You know the Rogun project.
Yeah,
okay. I didn't know it. I have to say.
Of course, I know.
I didn't know. I have to say. It's but for the time being, we are discussing it eternally. I mean, this project. What I heard, it's open for decades. I mean, and it's indeed. We are waiting but we are not depend on the World Bank environmental criteria. It's for the time being, it's eternally. We do wait the lead of the World Bank, and I think they are going to have it in discussion at their board in November. What I heard, but. On the environmental issues, I mean, for the time being, it's eternal also discussion that we don't depend on what the World Bank is going to say. If I remember well, there is a grant from the Commission for studies of 10 million euros for Rogun, and it's a project that is going to have large impact on the lives of people. It's in a critical sector, water, and we are looking at it. I do hope that we can proceed because it's, as I said, it's going to affect the lives of people.
Right, and I have a point because a lot of what we're doing about like NDB collaboration is about actually lowering transaction for clients. And one of the main issues of the transaction cost for clients is actually having differentiated due diligence, right? But so one of the issues that we are discussing is actually how we can do mutual reliance of standards. And the reason is because otherwise, when you co-finance, the due diligence that the transaction cost for the clients is huge. We have to, all of us having different, standards, right? But one of the issues is exactly what you're bringing up. You say, you know what, when things go wrong or when things are not clear, right, how we actually work on how we do it, right? So this is actually something that we hash out. We need to hash it out. But the answer cannot be that then we actually impose on these countries that have very low capacity, 300 million different standards, right, to actually do it. So we need to get it right. And actually, if you think about it, a lot of these boards are very similar to each other, right? When you work about the World Bank and you work about the Asian Development Bank and all that. So my point on this one is, like, we are working on that because we need to hash it out. The answer cannot be that then we, in particular when you go to low-income countries, that, to co-finance. Think about an airline, an alliance of airlines, right? Before, right, it was a nightmare because you could work with different airlines and your luggage, who knows, right? You don't know, right? Right now, what the client should be is that they're going to go from A to B and they shouldn't care, right, what carrier actually is taking up. So I look at the NDBs as an alliance of airlines, and we need to start streamlining our process. Sometimes it's painful, and we need to be very careful about that, right? But my point is we need to work it out, and we need to figure out how we're going to do it. I think Rogun is a very challenging project, right? But it's a very important one for us to get it right. So just to put it there, because innovation, as we said before, is not only about financial innovation, it's also about regulatory innovation, about processes, right? To make the life of our clients easier and better. Yeah, and I think yes.
So, on the environment issue, when you push too hard, I totally support your point. Two big examples, Narmada Dam in India by World Bank and Three Gorges Dam in China. All these oppositions that happen, it just enabled the World Bank to switch off. The countries funded the same dams on their own with probably lesser safeguards than they would have done if the banks had continued with a far more mix and match. So I think you should not push beyond a point, but you should work with the local standards, as I rightly said. But both the dams got built finally. Narmada in India and the Three Gorges in China.
Right. Okay. So, Hun, I'm done. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. I think it was great. And again, we will have like a sort of a wrap up, some notes. But thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the annual meetings and see, also Samarkand. I hope that you can actually have some time to actually enjoy. Thank you. Thank you.